All right. My recording's going. Oh, it's already recording. Perfect. Welcome back to Startup Talk. I'm your host, the Startup Coach, founder of Toronto Star. It's one of the largest startup communities in Canada. With me today is Elad Barak, CEO and co-founder of Djot. Welcome, Elad.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Can you tell us about your background and how it led to you co-founding Djot?
Yeah, so I'm actually doing this podcast back from where I grew up, which is in Israel. I came for a quick visit, but as I mentioned, grew up in Israel, did the military service, was an officer in the military. After that, I got an opportunity to work abroad for Israeli embassy, so I worked a year and a half in Mexico and another year in Ukraine. Back to Israel, I got my undergrad and master's in system engineering. And worked for 5 years in the Israeli aerospace industry, mainly with spacecrafts, a bit jet planes. At that stage, I felt things were too big for me in that company. It's the biggest company we have in Israel. And I moved to a very small startup that builds robots for the US military here in Israel. And that really kind of started up my passion with startups. I then went to Toronto to get my MBA at U of T. And after that, kind of led my career through smaller scale companies, one in the clean tech, then in the cannabis industry. And in that stage, I decided to start my own company, Djot, which is what we're talking about today. So that's kind of my path in 60 seconds.
So it's Djot.
Djot, yes, the D is silent.
Excellent. Thank you for letting me know. What inspired the creation of Djot?
So when I was working in the cannabis industry for a company that was trying to do beverages, and after a year, it kind of didn't work anymore. I wasn't too hireable probably, and we separated our paths. And I wanted to do also a cannabis beverage company. I thought things were done wrong. So a friend joined me, and we started this company. And we wanted to do a cannabis beverage, and we tried to think, what beverage should we do, what dose. And as we were working on it, our MBA hat kind of came to place, and we felt we're not solving the right challenge for consumers. Consumers want a cannabis beverage, but they're not asking us to choose the beverage or the dose. So we thought maybe a solution is to give them small vials where they can mix their own beverages. And we thought, okay, that's smarter, but it was still missing something. And that something was the dosing, as we're all different. And there's a lot of regulations that don't allow you to sell more than 10 milligrams at a time. So we said, okay, let's find a device that can help us dispense liquid according to the regulation and sell that. And we started doing a search, and we just couldn't find anything. And then we thought, you know what, why don't we develop our own product? And we kind of felt it actually also fits better our skill set of what we can bring to the table. And we started working on that, and in less than a month, we pivoted the company completely to what we're doing today, and neglected anything else, not touching anything that's cannabis beverages anymore from that perspective, but working on our dispenser to create them.
How does the Djot dispenser work, and what makes it unique in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, so I think the best way to kind of explain how it works, and maybe I'll just I'll stop the background. I just wanted to have the video bit in the beginning, but I'll keep a normal one that will be a bit nicer. So this is our dispenser. As you can see, it's very small if I have my phone next to it, so it's smaller than an iPhone. And the dispenser is what consumers call the Keurig of cannabis. So it's a one-time purchase, and it has inside a pod. And the pod is something you buy with your cannabis brand that you like, if they partner with us. You slide it in. On the bottom, there's a slider that once, this is mirror. So once I move it, it opens the dispenser, the screen turns on, and I can literally choose my dose here. So now it's in 2, and I can bring it up. Again, everything is mirror. I can bring it up to 3 or down to 1, and we're in Canada, so I can actually go up to 10. And then when I'm ready, I take a beverage, put it above, press the button, and I get an accurate dose right to my beverage, and it's good to go. I'm done. I close the slider, it turns off, and that's all I need to do. So now I can dispense any beverage I want. And I think what's important here, and we'll probably touch this more than once in this conversation, is there's a very deep understanding for us at Djot that we're a hardware company, not a cannabis company. And that means that we can dispense a lot of things, not only cannabis. And we have a way bigger vision for our company, which includes dispensing medicine, OTC, psychedelics, vitamins. There's a lot more opportunity for us. Cannabis is just a go-to market that we thought is a low-hanging fruit.
Since you're talking about the hardware, can you walk us through the process of developing and refining the dispenser and pod technology?
Yeah, so that was a long task. I think what we did well, and that kind of goes to my background, is system engineering. So this is almost 4 years ago, and we sat down and we made a really good list of requirements. And I took my team, and one of my team members, Ari, my co-founder, he's a CPG expert. You know, he ran Pringles globally for Procter and Gamble. He's not an engineer in any way, shape, or form. But I asked him, tell me what's your marketing requirements? And we took that very big list and we grinded it down to what we call, engineering requirements that we can actually follow afterwards, and started our developing process according to that. And I think in that way, it let our process further organized to what we have today. And a lot of times when people ask us, how did we get something that fits all the regulation today? It's because back when we started, we really kind of put our focus on system engineering. And there's a few things that I'd like to mention that I think are important. Sometimes, you can forget about is one of the things we wanted this to be is affordable. And our starter kit, which is a dispenser and pod, which are going on the market on $49.99, that's possible because we designed something that's low cost, so we can actually sell it to the mass market. So from the beginning, one of the requirements was don't make something too expensive. So every time we have to choose technology, we have to check, will the cost of the technology be something we can handle? Then there's the accuracy, right? So we had to check all kinds of technologies for the accuracy in the dispensing. But one of the things was a battery that lasts for a long time. So we had to make sure that these technology actually use a lot of power or not. So how can we make sure that we have a battery that lasts for a few days? So I think really with a good list of requirements and going through the process, we were able to do that. Another thing that we did that I'm not sure if is right or wrong, that's what we did. And there's sometimes that I feel maybe we should have done it upside down, is we first of all really focused on getting our technology ready. By stages. First, we were dispensing, then we dispensed quantities, then we actually calibrated it. And only when we had a really good product that we manufactured properly, we mold, and we knew what we're doing, we went and we did the design process, design from a consumer-facing perspective, and manufactured this. And the funny thing is, we're getting so much compliments and so much hype of the new design that sometimes we're thinking maybe we should have done the design first and then the technology, even though it's upside down and it's complicated. I don't know how it will fit exactly. But we really focused, first of all, on the technology. The first version, what we call the Founders Edition, looks like a small refrigerator. It's just a rectangular that I designed. And again, I'm a system engineer, not a designer. So that's kind of another thing that maybe was good, maybe was bad, but it was part of our process.
So how do you ensure the accuracy and consistency of dosing with the dispenser?
So process itself is not, of the checking is obviously not sophisticated or complicated. We have a really high very fancy scale, and we do a lot of measuring. But once we started checking technologies, we were looking for technologies that will allow us accuracy. And there's all kinds of approaches. We're using a component that's called the piezo electric component. They're known for their accuracy in many industries of different kind of different things that you do with them, noise and pumps and a lot of things. And what we did is we just created really accurate electric pulses to operate them and actually move diaphragm pump on one level, like one movement level. And since all the rest is constant, like we're getting very accurate dispensing. So that's kind of the process we did. We had a few other technologies we were checking in the beginning, and some of them were accurate as well, but they took too much power or just too much space. What we were able to do is contain a pump within something this small. So that was, I think the accuracy question really aligns to what technology allows a lot of other things around, because there's other ways to reach accuracy.
What have been some of the biggest challenges you face bringing Djot to market, and how have you overcome them?
So I think there's the obvious challenge that most companies will have, which is fundraising. And as a hardware company, there's no way to do it without money. When you want to build things, even if you want to do your prototypes, the prototypes usually cost way more than the manufacturing. Our first 10 PCBs cost us like $2,000. Then we manufactured thousands of PCBs, and each one costs, I don't know, $20 maybe, right? So like the cost reduces. So fundraising is always a challenge for any startup, and definitely for a hardware startup. But I think another challenge that maybe is a bit more unique to companies that are doing something that is more on the innovative side and change from the consumer perspective is, how do you go and convince companies? When we show this to consumers, they jump all over it. But companies that need to make a decision and justify their moves to their boards, in an industry that is kind of beaten up, and the cannabis industry is beaten up, is sometimes challenging. Sometimes they want to see the data, and I can't show them data because we're doing something, we're the first ones doing it. I can show a lot of supporting data, but not direct data. So sometimes convincing the bigger guys could be a challenge. But what we found is that there's more medium-sized companies that are more, I would say, they're more agile, and they kind of are more flexible, and their decision making is fast, and they're more connected to the market in a way, and they know what could be achieved with this. And I think that was our solution to go around that and have not only one partner but a few companies that are actually waiting to join. So I think that's one of the solutions we did that helped us a lot.
What has been the response from customers and the industry in general about Djot's dispenser?
So we just delivered our product to the OCS, and this is a tech podcast. So I'll just give a quick. OCS is the Ontario Cannabis Store, and they're essentially the provincial board that buys product for Ontario. If you want to sell cannabis in Ontario, you have to sell through them, and they will sell to the retail dispensaries. So we just delivered to them a week ago our first order, which is exciting. For us, it's a huge milestone. And as any startup wants to be a revenue generating company, we're a revenue generating company right now. And then the OCS sells it to the dispensary. So as of today, they are starting to sell it, and stores are ordering it. And in about a week, stores will start selling it. Last week, we did a launch event in one of the stores, and they're called Miss Jones, downtown Toronto. And we have a bunch of people there, bud tenders, did some education with them, and people love it because the solutions you have today in the cannabis industry are not really allowing consumers to get what they're looking for, and the beverages are not answering all of their requirements. So the people that came to the event loved it, and that was the video we had in the beginning, and the background with me was from our event. And people just they love the experience of choosing their own beverage, putting their own dose into it, and in a way, when you have our pod that has 300 milligrams and an average beverage is 10 milligrams, you have 30 beverages in your pocket. It makes you the most cool person at the party, and they were very happy to take that with them home.
How does Djot see itself fitting into the larger cannabis market, and who do you see as your competitors?
So there's two parts to this question. I'm happy to answer both of them. This is where I kind of have my opportunity as a founder of a company to bring my prediction. So the first thing is, the cannabis beverage market has not kind of achieved what everybody was expecting. Cannabis beverages is a topic that people are speaking about for 4 years. And okay, we achieved the technology. There's a lot of companies that can make cannabis water soluble, but still cannabis beverages are just about 2% in Canada, 1% in the States, and everybody's prediction is they're going to be 10%. And I've been claiming for a long time that the reason is that we're not selling cannabis beverages the right way. If I would tell you I have a great startup, it's a coffee sold in a can, you would tell me, well, a lot people don't buy coffee in a can. They buy it in beans or grinded beans, and they make it themselves. And on the same kind of logic, every beverage has its own serving. And cannabis beverages are not meant to be sold in a bottle because it's mainly water. It's costly, and it's very difficult to travel with it or to sell it. So we believe that this is the way to sell it. And once we do that, we'll get to that 10%. And once we get to that 10%, I do believe that the cannabis beverage will be divided into two. 80% are going to be pods, and 20% are going to be ready to drink, the bottles. When you go to an event, maybe, or I don't know, you want something like when you're going for a housewarming, I don't know. But in general, 80% of the market will be this. I kind of forgot the second part. I think it was the bigger vision, maybe, or
Who do you consider are your competitors?
Oh, the competitors. So that's another interesting point because the obvious competitor is beverages, though I don't think we're competing. I think we're going to grow the market and again, grow it from 2% to 10% by adding that 8%. That's my prediction. But I tell this a lot to people. After we kind of take over the beverage market, gummies is next. And the reason is that cannabis gummies are just a dosing mechanism. If you eat gummies, which most chances you're not because you're an adult, but if you do, you go to a store, you take a bag, and you pile a lot of gummies, then you go and you snack them. And no cannabis company has sold you a pack of gummies with 0.1 milligram per gummy so you can just snack them. They give you one gummy with 2 milligrams or 5 with 10. They're essentially giving you a dosing mechanism, which a lot of research shows that's the most important thing consumers want. So if all they're doing is a dosing mechanism, and it's a very dumb dosing mechanism, we do it better. So I think they're, next in line once we kind of prove our product. And again, we have a bigger vision outside of cannabis, but this is within our first market.
So I've interviewed a few cannabis startups. I have helped a few in our industry. I'm working with a CBD cream startup right now. I've worked festivals that are, on reservations. So, everything, anything goes. I work with, I do websites for cannabis stores. So I kind of know the industry somewhat. And I agree with you when you say dosing is the thing that people want. They want that feeling they get from a certain type of strain or a certain type of dosage or a certain type. I've gone to these festivals and I see people where they're giving up like 50 milligram coffee, and people are getting free refills all day long. And so that is a completely different style of person than the average person walking in the OCS, and having a product that will work for all of them is very key. Now, that boils down to this curveball I'm going to throw you is, do you see beverage dosing rules changing in Ontario and Canada? Because there is a volume problem.
Yeah.
And like you can only buy 5, you can't buy a 6-pack at the store because of the way it's sold. And things have to change a little bit to reach this 10%. How do you see that happening?
Yeah. So first of all, they did do a small change lately to the regulations a few months back, where you're now allowed to purchase up to 48 beverages, I think. But still, will you go with 48 beverages or will you just go with one pod, right? Our product will still be more flexible and better for consumers, and will still be more cost effective for consumers, which is something cannabis consumers are very aware of. I have to say, so first of all, we're not an Ontario company. We're based in Ontario, but we want to be in all of Canada. We want to be in the States because we don't touch the cannabis plant. We can actually go any border. We can go to Europe, we can go to Australia. And while we are playing within the regulations and we developed it to the Canadian regulations that we believe will help us work in many other regulations, because Canadian regulations are fairly tight, we don't believe that this is a regulation play. Where I'm going with this is I believe that even if tomorrow Ontario says you can sell a bottle with 100 milligrams, I think people will still prefer having a Djot dispenser than buying a bottle with 100 milligrams. That's kind of where we are, right? I don't think this is playing under regulations.
I agree with you in general, because the key is people want to drink what they want to drink.
Yeah, they want to drink what they want to drink. And you brought the coffee example, and I love that sample because I actually love dispensing my coffee. I smoke weed, I vape weed, and I never tell people that I'm claiming that I'm gonna convert the world to drinking. I think the people that don't want to smoke or vape, this is the solutions for them. People like me that want to maybe add some more things to their routine, reduce smoking, that's the solution. I'm still vaping cannabis, but every morning I love adding it to my coffee. And I know there's some companies that are doing cannabis coffee, but with respect, they're not selling me the same coffee that I want to drink in the morning in a coffee place. And they can't give me that experience, right? And that's where the dispenser comes into place, where I can go to a regular coffee place, add it to my coffee, sit there and enjoy nice coffee with my cannabis. And I got it with the company that the cannabis that I like, which is our partners. They have great water soluble cannabis. So I'm kind of like, I'm getting everything the best.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think my dream was being able to go to a Starbucks, getting whatever drink you wanted, and have it dosed with whatever. So you can
Yeah,
sit there and enjoy your drink without bugging anybody. There's no smoke, there's no vape and whatever in the air.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and have the beverage you want, not so
yeah,
much just like you say, you can buy a 48 pack of lime soda. Great. Is everybody gonna share one of lime soda or
yeah.
whatever it happens
And,
to
and
be?
and I have to add in this. A lot of times people ask me, what I love the most about our product, and I think my answer surprises them when I say, from my perspective, as somebody with an engineering background, what I love about this the most is the challenge to serve everybody. Because creating a product that serves one small segment, maybe it's interesting, but it's okay. But when you're trying to create something that consumers that want 1 milligram will enjoy, and consumers that want 10 milligrams will enjoy, and even somebody that wants to press the 10 milligrams a few times and get 50 milligrams will enjoy, that challenge, putting it all together, that's kind of like the iPhone challenge, right? And we even tried to design it that way. I want my mother to be able to use this, and I want hipsters, people in the street to enjoy this, and people with suits, because you can be discreet with this. That challenge of creating something for everyone is what, personally kind of gets me into this all the time and saying, okay, I want to continue developing this. I want to continue adding stuff. So it's kind of around this thing, and this dosing is part of it.
You kind of touched on it, but can you discuss Djot's recent partnership with Emprise Canada?
Yeah, so I think it's a really cool story because Emprise they're a mid-sized manufacturer. And when we started, as I mentioned at the beginning, we wanted big partners. But when we were looking for different products, because we wanted to fill our pods to test them, we stumbled into Emprise. They have water-soluble cannabis, and we found it to be the best. When I actually used it the first time, I liked it so much. I went on LinkedIn to find their CEO, and I sent him a LinkedIn message saying, "Hey, I just bought your product, and it's phenomenal." And we became LinkedIn friends, but nothing happened with that. And we were speaking with a bigger company about doing the first launch, and things were going just a bit slower than we wanted, right? Startups work on a different pace, and bigger companies work a bit slower because they have more decision making and more gates. So we're thinking, okay, we should probably talk with another company, and we reached back to Emprise, which we kind of knew but didn't discuss business before. And we showed them what we're doing, and I think they loved what we're doing. We really loved their product because we thought, why not start with the company we believe has the best product? And where this comes into place is, you were asking about our event last week. People were dispensing beverages to kind of see how it works, and really surprised and tell us, like, you know what, the guys, I feel this after 10 minutes. And even bartenders that usually have a higher kind of dose level tell us, like, wow, guys, I'm feeling this, because the product is really good. This is a company that focuses only on digestible products, a few creams, but mainly digestible products, that knows they're water soluble, and doesn't deal with anything else. They don't grow the cannabis, they don't make it into oil, they just know how to make CPG products. And I really think their product is phenomenal. So we're lucky to have this partnership with them. And I think together with our dispenser, it's really giving a great experience for the consumer, both on the technology side, but also on what they're consuming.
The format is great. One of your team was dispensing at one of our events,
Hmm.
and I got to experience it. It looks great, like how it works. It's just nice to see it and experience how it works, and that it's so compact and small. You can show it, but it's not like
Yeah,
feeling it in your hand, right? And you're
I
like,
agree.
oh, okay. It feels great, it looks great, and I think you're really hitting a problem around personal dosage. What is Djot's vision for the future of personalized cannabis experiences and the role of technology in that vision?
So, when you were saying that, it really hits on that personalizing, and I think there's something a lot of times, I've been to the cannabis industry almost 5 years now. You always hear companies talking about personalizing cannabis for consumers, and people go berserk about it. Yes, I can't wait for the cannabis to be made specifically for Elad. I'm like, okay, that's great, but there's no dosing mechanism yet. Like, you're talking about growing or selecting cannabis specifically for me and my DNA, but you don't even know how to dose it. I mean, aren't we trying to, like, jump a basic step here? Now, it's not that there's no dosing mechanisms in the world, but pipettes and labs cost hundreds of dollars, the professional ones. The ones that are just tubes, you need to know how to use them. You have to touch the liquid because the surface, there's a lot of mess around it. So my opinion, and this is about cannabis, but also about medication in general, is, and I'm no doctor, is that there's a lot of personalization we can add just by starting with the dosing. And I think in cannabis, it's a great example. And it's very, as I mentioned, it's a low-hanging fruit for a lot of reasons for us to start in. But I love to give examples from other places where I think it's really important. I can show why it's important. I have a 4-year-old. You heard him before the podcast. And usually when he needs Tylenol, it's usually in the middle of the night. He's crying. I'm nervous. My wife is nervous. You look on the package. How old is he? How much does he weigh? How can you figure? Why not put in the dispenser your kid's age, his weight, put a pot of Tylenol for kids and measure it for him? Because every kid needs something different. Record it because we have a Bluetooth, have it for later. In psychedelics, completely different example. Today, if you want to do microdosing, you're taking 100 milligrams of psilocybin, and if you need to increase it, you're going to go to 200 milligrams. You can't do 110. We can do that. Like in cannabis, we're actually saying 1 milligram, 2 milligram, 3 milligram, just because nobody cares about 1.1. But we can actually do 1.1, 1.2. So there's a lot of personalization. And, I tell this to people when we're in conferences, tell them, look around the crowd and tell me if you think that everybody here needs the same dose. If it makes sense to you, different gender, different backgrounds, different size, tall, short, fat, thin. So there's a lot of potential here. And now we kind of need to unlock it industry by industry and, take it through it. We have a roadmap. We're starting in cannabis where we don't need to be too accurate as we need maybe for the medical, but we have time now to develop it while we're generating revenue.
Can you talk about the importance of research and development in the cannabis industry?
So I think there's a lot of importance and there's different kind of things, and we see a lot of research on the cannabis plant itself. As I mentioned, I'm exactly in Israel where there's a lot of research around the cannabis plant itself, and I think all of that is great. I think when it comes to technology, we have a bit less of it. So there's a lot of software applications and there's a lot of competition between them, but I'm not sure that will, I wouldn't put that in R&D. And lately you're seeing in the vape world a lot of kind of competition with R&D, which I find exciting. Again, as a hardware company, I follow that. So there's iSpire, which is actually a company registered in the NASDAQ that just raised money, and they raised 20 million US dollars. And I think 4.8 of it or 5 million, something like that, in their PR is for R&D. And I'm excited about that. They're already doing a lot of improvements. We know there were a lot of challenges with vapes and all kind of like medical issues sometimes and pieces of metal. So I think there's always what to improve. But I also think, and I say this a lot of times when people challenge me on all kinds of things, you know what, I can't prove to you if what we're doing is right or wrong. Of course, I believe 100% it is, but challenge me if you want. But at least I can say one thing. We're doing something really innovative. And unfortunately, outside of vaping and maybe water soluble, you don't see a lot more R&D. And I'm sure there's more opportunities there. I don't have an idea right now, but it can't be that limited to vapes, water soluble, which again, there's dozens of companies that can do already, and Djot, which I don't know anybody else is doing, but there has to be more.
How has your MBA from the University of Toronto's Rotman School of Management contribute to your success as an entrepreneur?
I think in a lot of ways, I had a great experience in the MBA. I came as a cynical Israeli and left as a good Canadian. But I think for me, there's a lot of soft skills that I gained in the MBA that really helped me. I have a lot of that Israeli in me that gives you a lot of kind of like push power. People that work with me feel it right away. I'm very pushy. I have a lot of energy that I put into like the activities that we're doing, and I expect people to work hard on it. But I think a lot of the soft skills that you need as an entrepreneur, I learned through and during my MBA. And obviously, polishing a lot of the business acumen that you need. I don't have marketing in my background, and I'm happy to have a co-founder that is, he's a marketing guru from my perspective. But I need to be able to speak in his level, and I think I got a lot of, at least strategic thinking from the MBA that helps me with that. When we do fundraising, I definitely know my financials very well, and I can talk finance with investors. So you do need those like strong skills, but for me, the soft ones were really what helped me.
What advice would you give to someone who is interested in starting a cannabis related business?
Um, so I think one of the challenges with cannabis is that the industry has been through a lot, and a lot of investors have been burned. There were a lot of companies that raised high amounts of money and then collapsed. We've seen that multiple times in the market where companies lose 90, even more percent of their value. Um, and that leads to a lot of fear. So not only there's not a lot of investors, there's a lot of fear with investors. Um, there also, from my perspective, when I take the hardware as a background, there were a lot of companies that wanted to do vapes, and they came into the industry after there was one leader and tried to create a vape that couldn't compete with the leader. And again, the companies disappeared. So a lot of times companies tell me, well, what about all these companies? Why would you be different? And so I think one of the biggest challenges for companies in the cannabis industry that are doing something innovative or just a small startup is kind of grinding through, historical disappointment from an investor that has nothing to do with us sometimes, but we kind of, need to pay a bit of the price for. So that I would say is the challenge. It also goes to the companies, as I mentioned. Sometimes they're a bit more risk averse at this stage because they don't want to go too crazy and then not know how to explain themselves. It's waves that will probably go back at some stage to more growth and more risk taking, but that's kind of where it is right now. I think another thing as an advice is one of the things that we say is, and once we understood that we're not really a cannabis company, we're a hardware company, is to really define and explain, look, we're working in the cannabis industry where, we can get revenue really quick. We finished our manufacturing on March and we're in May and our product is on the market selling, right? Like you can't find that anywhere else. If I would do vitamins, which kind of fits from a, regulatory perspective, I can do that. I'm looking in a year and a half before I put this in the market with a company like Walmart or one of those big chains. So there's a lot of advantages in the cannabis industry, and maybe you can kind of, if you're a tech company, maybe you can understand that you're more of a tech than the cannabis, right? And I think that can give some advantages.
Without telling tales out of school, is there any advice you would give to cannabis companies? There's OCS, there's BC, every province has different laws, every state has different
Mhm.
laws. Is there a place? Let me start again a little bit. When it comes to alcohol, sometimes it's better to start out west where individual buyers own a lot of stores and you can get in started versus going
Yeah.
directly to the LCBO. Um, is there a easier market to break into other than Ontario OCS, which is,
Yeah,
neither.
absolutely. The
Sorry.
short answer is yes. Yeah. But I'm happy to kind of like open that up. So the short answer is yes. I think that if you look to Saskatchewan, you'll find a much easier market to approach. But when you're choosing your market to launch in as a company, you want to have a bunch of ingredients into this. And one of the things that was important for us was to prove this in the market that is more tough in a way, right? Because we need to show something, we need to prove something. As a hardware company, we still need to do more fundraising, and we want to prove it where we can. We also wanted to start in a market that has a bit more kind of, it will make more noise, right? If you're succeeding in Saskatchewan, I'm not sure if we'll receive the same kind of noise and news and cover up as if we're doing in Ontario. Nothing against any other province. So I think there's kind of like different, different aspects. Another aspect that kind of plays for our assistant in Ontario is the fact that everything goes through the OCS. And as a small company, that reduces a lot of our logistics. So I'll just clarify what that means. We do not need to ship product to each and every store. We actually ship our product to Enterprise, and we even did a starter kit with them. So in order to make sure that everybody has dispensers, we're selling the dispenser with the pod in the beginning, but we're doing it through Enterprise. We're actually losing a bit or leaving, we're leaving money on the table because we're adding it with partners. But now the OCS is distributing for us our product across a huge province with more than 1,500 stores. So I have the possibility for really being everywhere, and I don't need to work on the logistics too much, which in other provinces, maybe we would have to do more work on the logistics. So there's also advantages. And it was kind of like looking at all of these different small options or big, and deciding. We also thought about different markets outside of Canada. But we really thought that starting in your backyard is the best, where we can, I'm going to be a brand ambassador next week in different stores, and I'm excited about that. So not only I get to sell my product, but I actually get to talk with consumers and see what they think. And, if it would have been in the other side of Canada or the world, it's just a much bigger effort. So this is, it's great to have it in the backyard. One of the dispensaries in my neighborhood is going to sell it. So, it's exciting to go buy it there.
When breaking into the cannabis industry or any industry, you need to get user feedback. You need to test your product. You need to talk to users. The problem, obviously, in the cannabis industry is, there's a lot of rules and regulations around that. You mentioned, the OCS, but there's a lot of non-OCS stores. In fact, one of the
Hmm.
biggest ones in Toronto is non-OCS cafe, where pretty much
Yeah,
everything in their store isn't available in the OCS, and they
yeah.
pride themselves in that, and they just pay the fine whenever somebody decides to. Would you recommend, or maybe not recommend, because who knows, I don't know the legalities on this. Is that a way for a founder to go to try and, prove that there's demand for their product before, trying to escalate to the level of OCS?
I think it's an option. It's definitely an option. We had our opinion where we wanted to play within, it, it's kind of from a different approach. I used to use cannabis before it was legalized. And I always tell people the biggest thing about legalizing cannabis is not having a store next to my home. It's the possibility to know that I'm a good citizen and the government doesn't think I'm a criminal. And that's important. People that use cannabis, a lot of them are normative people, and it's a bad feeling to consume cannabis and look around your shoulder while some police officer come in and bug me. So for me, that's a big change, and that's something I want to support. And I wouldn't want the company that I'm part of to go and sell in an illegal market or in an illegal store, because I really want to support the legal market, both as a consumer but also as a company. So for us, that was more of kind of like, I don't know if to call it an ethical decision, but that was the reason we didn't do something like that. Um, but I don't think it's something that's not possible from a functional perspective, or but it's up to you and your values and where you want to put them, right?
Absolutely. And I think there's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to make 1,000 product and put it out there and see what I can sell and get feedback from, and then take that information to
Yeah,
investors and prove that I can sell something. That's something different than I'm going to make a living off selling at
I
this
agree.
thing. So it's just trying to figure out, is this, you have to prove that there's a market, people are willing to buy it, people are willing to pay a certain price, so you can take that and escalate it forward. So
Yeah.
those, I'm just looking at different ways that potential companies might be able to do that.
Mhm.
Again, you're a hardware company, and this, you're just starting in the cannabis industry, but let's face it, cannabis is a hot topic. What are some of the biggest misconceptions about the cannabis industry that you've encountered?
Um, the biggest misconceptions, I think, first of all, people think it's easy. And the proof is, you walk in Toronto and you see how many stores are one next to each other. And you think what they didn't understand, that if they're putting one next to each other, it's not going to be easy. In my neighborhood, there are 4 stores. I think there's maybe 50 meters difference between each one of them. And I don't know, maybe the fourth one started the process before they knew that the other three are there, because it's a long process. But there's a lot more companies than we need at this stage. And a lot of people, I think, are still thinking they can join the industry and make easy money. And that's not the case. There's a lot of competition. It's a sophisticated market that I don't think was completely, or still isn't completely, kind of figured out. Some companies are starting to do it much better. And then we're starting to see companies that are profitable, which we didn't have before. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's easy, and it's definitely not. And I think a good, foundation for these companies that are successful is really having both people that know the business they're doing. Meaning, if my partner actually knows CPG, and not just, want to be experts for that, but also having at least 1 or 2 people in the company and the C level that actually understand the plant and understand what they're trying to sell to consumers. Because if you don't, you see a lot of mistakes, like the first companies in Canada that didn't grow good cannabis as much as all of the small ones are growing today. And they could have hired the same people that used to grow in the illegal market and take them to their facilities with a lot of money. So I think there's a lot of learning that you need to kind of have all of the professionalism with the love to cannabis, but also that it's not easy.
I agree. I think there's a lot of people who just think, oh, I'm just gonna open up a store, get a license, and
Yeah.
people will come. And
If you build it, it will
unfortunately,
come.
yeah,
Sorry.
unfortunately, like everything else, my saying is, if they build it, they won't come. If you, so I used to go to a bar to watch sports and stuff, and it's always empty. And I talk to the man, what are you doing to bring people in? You're supposed to be a sports bar, you do fantasy sports, and they just look at you
Mhm.
dully. Like there's 10 things you could be doing every day that to fill this place up. Same thing with cannabis stores. They open up and think they'll come, but they're not actually building their community. I think now more than ever, you need to build your community. You should be running events. You should be doing
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff to get people physically there. Trivia, samples, speed dating, movie nights, all 1,001 things in the head you could be doing just to start building your community and get them out. Um, I always think that speed dating for cannabis people, for cannabis enthusiasts would go over big, because then one, you're at a speed dating for cannabis enthusiasts. That whole thing that you smoke cannabis stigma is no longer applies. You never have to at some point say, oh, by the way, I'm going to go have a puff and cringe and whether if they're okay or not.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things that people can do. They just don't. They just do this thing and then, don't do anything else. And that is a really missed opportunity. People really need to start thinking about, if you're owning a store, how do you get people in? If you have a product, how do you get demand for that product?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have any tips for founders?
I mean, that's a very open-ended question for a big question. I'm sure I have many if I'll have, if somebody talks with me, but I think the most important thing is, one, it's usually hard, right? Like one day success happens over a few years. There is no one day success, one night success, right? Or overnight. Um, and that you really need to believe in what you're doing and be into it. If not, you won't have the passion or the power to pull through. We've been doing this for above 4 years now, and there's a lot of challenges in the way. It's a roller coasters. There's a lot of highs and lows. Um, and every time, like, we finished the launch event and we came back to the office and we took the whiteboard and we're like, okay, what do we need to do now? And we have way more tasks than we had before. Like, weren't we supposed to be happy? We just finished a huge milestone, right? But when you're the founder, work never stops, and every time you finish, you get to one kind of peak, you notice, okay, there's a bigger one I need to continue to right now. um I don't know, so just maybe know what you're going into, but there's definitely nothing more interesting than having your own company or being a founder on the professional level, in my opinion.
Always be testing. So absolutely. If you're got 100 new tests on the board, that would make me a happy person.
Yeah.
Uh, and you got to celebrate the wins. You have a launch party, you had a great big victory, but yeah, you can't stop. You have to keep
No.
the momentum going. What is next for you and Djot?
So I think right now we need to start growing. So we already got approved for another province, and we have more partners that are waiting to join. And we have to kind of manage that growth. And with hardware, sometimes it's really hard to grow without fundraising, because you need scale to actually be profitable with hardware a lot of times, right? Our electronics need scale to be in the right cost for us. So right now it's really about managing correctly our growth and not taking kind of commitments we can't do, or fundraising and supporting them. But then where we're seeing is we really want to take this, grow this as fast as possible, the cannabis kind of side of our business, till maybe a potential of an exit of selling the cannabis arm, but keeping the core technology with us so we can focus on other industries. As I mentioned, we see a lot more industries to do. And I always tell this to people. If I do one deal with Pfizer, I'm probably going to make for Djot more money than everything I can do in the cannabis industry. Pfizer by itself does $50 billion revenue as one company. So there's a few medical companies that if we get one or two medicine with them, that's the future. So we really want to see how we can take this to other industries. Our vision is to help personalize people's, support people's health and wellness by personalizing their dose. And the goal is to have this in any medicine cabin, right? So people can have it for their Tylenol, maybe for opioids. I had a surgery because of my medical condition, and I got 50 pills of opioids and told use it over a week, not over 2 days. And that's not a way to support a patient with pain that you want to make sure doesn't get addicted. Why not give them a dispenser that locks itself so you can't dispense more than once in 4 hours? So we see so many opportunities for ourselves outside of cannabis, and when we want to start to pursuing them, we just kind of have to achieve some growth first in cannabis that will, in a way, finance this, so we can move on. And that's where we see our vision is. And once we leave the cannabis industry and we go to all these other industries, we're definitely not a cannabis company, but in my opinion, we're a unicorn company at that stage.
Where can people go to find out more about you and Djot?
Sure. So very simple, Djot.com. One of the advantages of making your own brand and your own name is that even fourletters.com is still there for you. So djot.com is our website. Has all of information. It shows our first partners. And then I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. If anybody wants to reach out, Elad Barak. I think even my email is on the screen right now, elad@djot.com. In Toronto, I'm always happy to network with other entrepreneurs that want to meet, talk. There's always a lot of learning to do. We're in downtown Toronto. And yeah, if you want to reach out to the company or follow, we also have an Instagram page, Djot Official, where you can see some pictures and stuff. And we uploaded a few videos on YouTube that you can find if you type Djot that kind of show how the product works and your basic frequently asked questions.
Most of those links will be in the podcast show notes. I'm not sure about all the YouTube videos. That's why I always say most of those.
I can forward it afterwards. Yeah.
Perfect. Then all those links will be in the podcast show notes for those people who want to find out more. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to be part of the Startup Talk podcast.
Thank you so much, Craig. I really appreciate it. It was really fun.